Let's go to Senator Rand Paul, who joins us from the nation's capital. Senator, a busy day in terms of unfolding scandals, huh?
If it's not one scandal, it's another. When's it going to stop?
Which is the most important?
Well, to me, I've been thinking a lot about, Lincoln's got this quote, and he says, nearly any man can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man, give him power. I think really the president's failing the test of power. He's been given great power, but really he needs to understand that he has to learn how to control that and not to abuse it. The IRS is an abuse of power. To use the IRS to target your opponents is an abuse of power. Now, he may say he didn't make the decision. That could well be. But if he wants to make it right, the people who made that decision need to be fired.
Yeah, I was thinking, don't you think it would be constructive at this point, given so many problems with the administration of Attorney General Holder, including Fast and Furious, if the president, with reluctance in quotes, accepted Attorney General Holder's resignation, and the president actually appointed a Republican, a conservative Republican, as Attorney General?
I don't think I'd hold my breath on that one, Michael. But, I am also bothered by the AP story in the sense that, conservatives, we're really good with the Second Amendment, but we also need to be good with the First and the Fourth Amendment in the sense that your private papers should not be violated without a judge's warrant, but also the sanctity of the press having their own ability to talk to sources and things shouldn't be violated except for with a judge's warrant. Now, some people say, that bar is too high. It's really not that hard to get a judge's warrant, but you do have to convince a judge and you have to talk to them. And to get one to violate the First Amendment or to somehow abbreviate or abrogate the First Amendment, it's going to take a little bit of convincing for a judge to do that. But I think they should have that step, because really the next step is, what if you're only investigating conservative magazines or conservative talk radio? There are real problems with making it easy for government to obtain records on the media.
There's no question about it. We will be speaking for a few moments longer with Senator Rand Paul, the junior senator from Kentucky. I'd want to get with Senator Paul on this question of a select committee. Do we need a new committee? Should it investigate Benghazi specifically, or the whole range of unfolding scandals, as I believe? More coming up with Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky.
Portions of the Michael Medved Show. The Michael Medved Show.
Okay, you've heard the Obama administration and its admirers in the press and in politics explain everything by blaming it on President Bush. You've heard them try to explain everything by blaming it on evil Republicans in Congress, like our guest, Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. Now there's something new. The big headline on CNN, second-term curse. Must be just that darn second-term curse. You think, Senator Paul?
Well, I just wonder whether or not there are people within the administration that think they're above the law and that people can be targeted, for their religious or political beliefs. But I think if you ask people in general, whether they're Republican or Democrat, about government, using the power of government to bully people because of their religious or political beliefs, I think most people are really offended by that. Even if you may disagree on the actual issue in play, but just the idea that the power of government can be used to bully the citizens, I think really is offensive to a lot of people.
I think it is profoundly offensive to a lot of people, even to some people on the left. What about the idea that a number of your colleagues have put forward that we really do need a special select committee to dig at the Benghazi scandal and the rest of them? Do you agree?
I think there are a couple things. The review board that came out and looked at Benghazi, I've been mostly concerned about what led up to Benghazi, lack of security, etc. And, Ambassador Pickering seemed to think, these decisions didn't rise up to the level of Hillary Clinton, and he sees that as exoneration. I see that as precisely her culpability, that decisions with regard to Libya, one of probably the 5 most dangerous countries in the world, those decisions should have risen to her level. And if she didn't have those coming to her, she wasn't a very good leader and really was in dereliction of duty if she didn't allow that to happen. And so whether or not we need a special committee or not, I think we do know that ultimately the responsibility for this lay with Hillary Clinton. And when this happened under Bill Clinton, when Les Aspin didn't provide security for Mogadishu, he was forced to resign. So I think there's a lot of similarities. But the bottom line is somebody should be fired for making these decisions, and nobody ultimately was fired over Benghazi, and that's a problem.
Well, I think one of the things that my colleague and friend Hugh Hewitt has emphasized is that we know from the testimony at the hearings just last week that Hillary Clinton had a 2 a.m. in the morning phone call to Gregory Hicks at the embassy in Tripoli, and she never called back as events unfolded. There were 8 hours of attacks. She never called back. And by the way, in testimony to Senator McCain and Senator Graham in the Armed Services Committee in February, Secretary Panetta said the same thing, that he spoke to the president initially early in the crisis, but the president never called back as information unfolded. He never spoke directly to the president. Are you clear, Senator Rand Paul, on who it was who gave the order, the final authority on the order to stand down for potential attempts at rescue or intervention?
No, I'm not. And if it rose up through the military chain, and if that military person is gone and has accepted responsibility, that's one thing, but you won't know unless you ask. If it rose through the military ranks and then it got to a political question, and the military, whoever made the ultimate military decision, had to consult with a political leader who overrode them, that would be important to know, but you would only know if you keep asking questions all the way up the chain of command. So the Colonel Gibson, who was dissatisfied that he was not allowed to go help his Marines in Benghazi, someone should ask him who gave him the order, and then that person should be asked, did the order originate with you or above you? And the only way you'd have that is by having more hearings. I think the House has the ability to bring these people in. I think the general in charge of AFRICOM has resigned, but I think it would be a good question for him is to ask him, was the decision his or was he told to make this decision from a political source?
Yeah, this is obviously necessary stuff. I take it you disagree with the President of the United States that the talking points were just a sideshow?
I've always said the most important decision that was made incorrectly and the real dereliction of duty was beforehand, but I also think that there was something going on and mistakes made during the battle, and then afterwards it still perplexes me why they would go on and on for days saying this was something to do with the movie when it clearly wasn't, and no one from Libya was saying that it had anything to do with the movie. That perplexes me, but it makes me wonder, was that just a bonehead political mover because they didn't want to talk about terrorism? Or was there really, really something they were trying to divert and misdirect us from? And that's why I've asked the question several times. There was a ship that left Libya a week before the assassination loaded with arms going to Turkey. The day of the assassination, the ambassador met with the Turkish attaché. There is a CIA annex there. What were they involved with? Were they facilitating arms to Turkey and then on to Syria? And they don't want to talk about it because at that time they were publicly saying they were not sending arms. Now, do I have any evidence? No, because no one will answer my question. I asked Hillary Clinton the question, and she acted like, she'd never heard of arms going to Syria. But then there were reports in the New York Times and other venues saying, you know what, she was the biggest advocate of sending arms to Syria within the administration.
Your colleague, Senator Ayotte, asked Admiral Mullen, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, why there wasn't anyone stationed nearby in Crete, given the alarms beforehand that there might be a dangerous situation on September 11th in Benghazi. And he said it wasn't his decision, it was a State Department decision, but not identifying Secretary Clinton.
Well, see, and ultimately, one of the worst decisions was made was also Secretary Clinton's, and that's to put an embassy into Libya, period. And if she's going to say she didn't make that decision, I have to ask what decisions was she making. But I've always said all along that I think the embassy and the consulate in Libya should have been under military control like they do in Baghdad, but not like Paris. There's a difference between Benghazi and Paris, and I don't think she fully recognized the difference.
Yeah, well, I think better restaurants in Paris in addition to better security. That's Senator Rand Paul, the junior senator from Kentucky, asking some of the questions, posing some of the questions that need to be asked. We do not, it's unbelievable, it's 6 months later, we don't have complete information. By the way, it's, 8 months later, to be honest. We will be right back on the Medved Show.
Portions of the Michael Medved Show.